Welcome, citizens of the globe, to the Frontend Heroes podcast, where we discuss all things villainous and heroic about the front end of software development. My name is Evan Payne. I'm a senior front-end developer at Actimo, and with me, as always, is my co-host Scott Francis, a senior front-end engineer at Porsche. How you doing, Scott?
Yeah, I'm really good. That's the first time that's been said on the podcast, so I'm pretty excited about that. Really glad. It feels like spring's arrived in Barcelona, so it's quite nice. And just looking forward to today's show.
Absolutely. I remember last year as well. I think this time of year we were recording. I was sitting outside on the balcony anyway, so it's getting close to that weather again. That's super nice.
Yeah, it really is.
So today's episode is sponsored by NetCentric, an award-winning Adobe Global Alliance partner headquartered in Switzerland with offices all over Europe as well as in Pune, India. They're currently hiring for a number of roles, so if you are looking, check them out. We are, as ever, completely glad to have their support with this show and going forward. So today we have a guest. Thank you so much for being here. It is Sarah Dayan, a staff software engineer at Algolia. Sarah, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thanks for having me. So, I'm Sarah. As you said, I work at Algolia. I've been there for almost 3 years. I'm going to celebrate my third year in a couple of months. And yes, basically, I've been working in the industry for over 10 years now, which seems like an eternity, but has gone so fast. And mostly I work on the front end. So lately I've been focusing mostly on Vue, React, and TypeScript. But yes, I love many different topics, such as I love CSS. I've been doing CSS for a long time. I love test-driven development. I cannot shut up about it. And yes, that's mostly what I do every day is focus on the front end and try to bring the best of Algolia for developers.
Nice. Yeah, and we invited you on because I, in particular, when I was researching into Tailwind and whether it was okay or not, I had to fight past that gut reaction to be like, no, I don't like this at all, which I had done with even the Bootstrap utility classes. And I remember reading the article on your blog that was in defense of utility first CSS. And the way that it was structured and laid out really convinced me gradually. By the time I got to the end of that article, I was like, okay, I don't have any counter arguments anymore. It makes perfect sense. This is a valid approach that will be good for our team. So this episode is titled "Here's the Plan," in the vein of comic books and superheroes. And the take I had on it was that, when you're going into making changes or improvements to your code base, it can be in some ways a little bit like saving the world, in that it requires not just the guts and the, reaching for it, but also a well-prepared team. So we'll talk a bit about putting together a plan and comparing new technologies to old. So the starting with that, how do you approach whether or not to adopt a new tool or a pattern?
So there are many things, but before deciding whether you want to use something or not, I would say the first thing is common sense. Do you need it or not? Are you solving something or not? There are many new tools, many new things that you can use that are exciting, but maybe it doesn't make sense in your project. So if you're here to play with something, maybe it's better to create a new side project and use it to experiment. But sometimes you do need something, and it's a fine line. It's a fine line because sometimes you will realize that there are other tools that can do exactly the same thing or almost the same thing as this new tool, but this new tool feels that it has a better approach. I can give you a practical example. State machines are becoming hot again, especially in the front end. They're becoming hot, period, because nobody ever used that. It was never really mainstream or anything. And you can do without state machines. You can use just pieces of state, fragmented states. You can use state reducers. You can use whatever. Nothing that you can do with state machines uh, is something that you cannot do without state machines. But it's going to be helping with another problem. It's not like, can you do it or not? It's more, what kind of experience is it going to bring? Is it more confidence? Is it cleaner code? Is it less errors or less less runtime errors, or like, pick your metric. But it's not like, maybe the first thing that you want to drift away from uh, is it allowing me to do something that I currently cannot do? And oftentimes you will find that with your existing tools you can do pretty much anything you can do with new tools. Another example would be something like um,
Yeah.
WebSockets. You can do a chat without WebSockets. You can pull your server. You like there has been technologies to do that forever, and they work well, or well-ish. But still, but it's more like, is it better suited? What is the problem that I'm actually trying to solve? Am I trying to fit a hot new tool into a problem that I don't have, or am I trying to solve a problem and assessing technologies that might be a good fit? So that, I would say, is the first step, is trying to identify really,
Mm.
from a honest standpoint, what am I trying to do? And sometimes you may realize, I just kind of want to use that because it feels nice, it feels cool. It's okay, we all go through that. But maybe your professional project that a lot of people rely on may not benefit from that. So like, it's a first good assessment, I would say, before deciding whether you're going to use this tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times we as developers, or it's easy to for a certain personality type, and the front end, I think we gravitate towards that. Those types, this personality type gravitates towards the front end. Is someone that just wants to try things out and see if they work, and they don't always. I'm speaking from personal experience. I don't always take the time to really think through why I'm trying to adopt something. Yes, I know that there might be some part of it that is appropriate and works. A good example in this case is in this is very Angular centric and Angular world. In NGRX, there is this pattern you can lay on top that's called a facade. And I really like it. And I like it in my side project where I use it a lot, and it works really well there. It's not necessarily defined anywhere, or when it is, it's you can do it one way or another. And sometimes it looks wrong, actually. But I get a lot of pushback from the community on that because it's not really necessary. And I'm not articulate enough to define why it's worked for me so far. Um, I don't know, Scott, if you've had any experiences like that as well, of wanting to try something but not necessarily knowing how to convince people.
I think to a certain extent everybody has, haven't they? In the profession, because as you say, we're the kind of people who want to try something new. We read about something, we want to know if it's going to work or not. I think that like that's fine. I mean, like actually just wanting to try things out is good enough reason for me. I really think it is. Yeah, where you actually do that, whether you can actually push that into your a project that you're doing for a client, or whether that has to stay away from that and like really you take the time to figure it out in a side project or something like that. Then that's there's always ways of getting that in there. I honestly I almost maybe I'm a little different to other front enders because I'm always like I'm maybe somebody who looks at like something new and thinks, actually, I'll wait to see how that pans out before like I dive in. And the reason behind that is like um, I think with technology, with front end stuff. I'm a little bit hesitant because I feel like I've been around for so long that I've seen so many things come that have been like, no, this is the way that you do it, and then like a year later, there's another article, a defining article comes out saying, no, this is definitely why you shouldn't do it, and I kind of like, and I'm almost like feel like I'm a bit long in the tooth, and I just think, well, I'll let that battle play out, and then I'll go with the winning side. Um, so maybe my approach is a little different to yours, Evan, and yours, Sarah.
That's interesting. What you just said is reminds me that uh, looking for the truth is usually like, we're never gonna find it. There's never gonna be an ultimate way, and maybe we will, like we were talking about utility for CSS earlier, maybe something else will come out. I would say I hope, if because if it doesn't, it means that okay, we are at the stage, we reached the final stage of CSS innovation and we're done. Like that's sad. To me, that's extremely sad. That's
Yeah.
also something that I love about the front end, and that many people who don't like front end hate, is that it constantly evolves, because we are kind of in that era where we're discovering so many things. I remember using jQuery for so long and it was fine, and people telling, yeah, it's slow, but I didn't find it that slow, or at least it worked for what I did. And I've worked on projects that were solely made on jQuery and they worked. So it may be outdated technology today. I would say that it's probably not, because so many people are still using it. But it's exciting for me that at some point we got a burst of so many UI libraries and frameworks and whatnot. And yes, it creates front end fatigue, but at the same time, it's exciting. We're discovering new things, and we'll never know. We will have to make some bets. Now, there are bets that feel safer than others, but yeah, I also like the idea that sometimes you have to find that balance between the leap of faith and like the expertise of, okay, I feel that it kinds of probably is going to fix my problems. And to me, like utility first is a good example. To make a comparison, so I love nerding out about functional programming, even though I'm a very beginner in that topic. And it's funny to use functional programming patterns in JavaScript, because the language is not really neither functional nor object oriented. It's kind of everything and nothing at the same time. So you can try to mimic it. You can mimic patterns that you can find in actually functional languages, but it doesn't feel natural. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I just want to use a pipe just because it's cool to just being able to pipe stuff. But you could do without, and it doesn't feel natural. And in that case, I would be like, okay, I'm not I can pretty much say that it's probably not going to scale the best for the entire team to decide to use that everywhere. For utility first, though, the reason why I really went all in with it is because when I started using it, I felt immediately that it alleviated so many pain points. And that's to me the reason also why Tailwind is doing so well and why it took over in just a couple of years, is that we all got used to writing CSS in a certain way, and we all felt some of kind of the same pains, but we didn't speak about it, mostly because it's like, yeah, that's the way you write it, and the CSS
Mhm.
gods have said that's the way you do it. But suddenly there's something that fixes all those pains, like, and developer experience became more prominent again. It's like we need to be able to enjoy the like working in a certain way. And also it kind of it fits well with that React or Vue aspect of handling the DOM, where you want to put form and function together. So it came at the right time, and it felt so idiomatic, like very organic. It felt like it belonged here, and it felt so natural that it kind of felt like a safe bet. Like once you weighed out all of the problems, like, or is it going to scale? Is it performant? And it's easy to find out. Once you weigh all that and you try it out, it's like, okay, I can definitely tell that this is going, at least in my opinion, it's going to go in the right direction, and there might be a lot of adoption for it.
Yeah, I had the same experience. Again, I leaned heavily on your article and the talk you did and the stuff by Chris Wathan as well about it. But it still was like, okay, this all now makes sense to me. It's been explained in a way that I'm willing to give something that I wouldn't have given an actual try, which is great. And I think more people should do that for the things that they're trying out new patterns. Is really get there and explain the need for it. I feel like even NGRX in sometimes, or even like Redux wasn't always explained that well, but people adopted it because it was already there as part of, the Flux pattern from Facebook days or from React days. But I adopted it on my side project, which it's a largish Angular project, right? And I took one weekend and I just refactored the whole code base, or like everything I'd built so far, to use Tailwind, and it was like a proof to me that it worked. Right? It was okay. I've removed the escape hatch. Right? I've assigned my config file. I'm now monitoring the size of my generated CSS. It's way smaller than it was before. It was a really excellent, like, proof is in the pudding moment for me as well. And yeah, I'm also, I try to be all in on my own projects, right? On the actual work project, yeah, it's not always easy to get the buy-in. But if I did try to push for that, I would be convinced, because again, the developer experience is also there alongside of it. Um, it's a paradigm shift as well, like the same way that Houdini. So you asked what might be next for CSS. I mean, Houdini is still like in the future phase, but this idea of it doesn't have to be a box model anymore. It can be a hexagon model. That's gonna change a lot of how the web works, which is exciting. These paradigm shifts.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, no.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like, okay, how do you convince people? And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the article, the one of the reasons why it did well and it continues doing well, if like it's not decaying really, and it keeps coming up sometimes, and people are reading it in spikes, is because it takes the problem from the angle of the people who might be skeptical to that, and feel like, I don't like it. But the thing is that right now, if you don't like it, you still hear a lot about it, so it feels at the same, either you want to be like, I don't care, I don't think it's good, and the article is not for you, because if you think that it's not good and you're not willing to look into it, then no argument is gonna convince you. You're probably just in a phase where you decided that it's not good for you, and it's okay. We all process things at a different pace, and sometimes there are things where we just don't want to have anything to do with it. But for people who might be against the idea, or it feels unnatural, but at the same time they hear Tailwind everywhere all the time, everybody's talking about it, why can't they stop talking about it, and also, am I missing out? Then I think those people who are on the fence are the ones that are the most numerous first, but they're not necessarily the most vocal, and there are the people who need this nudge. And that's the angle that I wanted to take after having conversations live with people, and like having those arguments over and over, and having the same questions being raised and answering them the same way, and seeing that some people that I thought were like really smart people who really want, okay, just give me the facts, and then I'll be convinced if you're able to convince me. Then I thought, okay, maybe it's just a matter of maybe it's just a matter of packaging that properly, so that people understand it, and it's easy to grasp. It's not full of lingo or anything like that. It takes real use cases, real examples, and one by one it strips away the fear, because that's the root. It's okay, if I adopt that, then it's gonna litter my entire code base. It's harder to remove CSS than anything else in a code base to migrate to, because it's a lot harder to statically analyze. And it's like, I don't want to take over that project of migrating my entire CSS for a practice that seems so far away from what I've been told that I should do. So, okay, I need, and we probably all need that at some point if we don't feel confident in a specific area. I need someone to guide me through that, and to reassure me into and bring me into a place where I feel confident about that. And so that's what I wanted to do, and I think that's the job that the article and the talk have been doing so far. And I'm really happy. I've been discussing with many different people who told me that it helped them convince their teams that it was the right thing to do. And it happens in many teams. Sometimes you have one person in a team who really feels strongly about something and they're right. Not that you're ever right about anything again, like it will change tomorrow, but they are right about the solution to take at a given moment, but nobody wants to listen because it's too new. And sometimes because they are all alone, or maybe they don't have the authority or whatever, they need a nudge, they need the help from something external. And it helps so many people who really actually reached out and told me that they used that, they sent it to their engineering manager, tech lead, or whatever. They had conversations, they did presentations, and they ended up migrating, and everybody feels a lot happier about the code base. So to me, that's what's interesting. It's instead of being in a fight of you're wrong for doing that, or no, I'm right and you should feel bad for thinking that. It's like, let's take a step back and um, let go of the belonging aspect. I want to be part of the club, or like the cool kids club, or I don't want to be part of the cool kids club. And just be like, okay, what is going to benefit the projects, and let's think about it from a fact standpoint, and look at the things that are making people afraid of trying it out.
Yeah.
I I think that that's the really key thing. That, I mean, the article's really well written. I mean, like, congratulations for that. But that's, and I think that that's why people would continue referencing it, because it is so easy to follow and to knock arguments down one by one. I mean, I think a misconception that I had of it when Evan talked about this like a year ago. But a misconception that I had of it was the first one, I think, that you debunk in the article, that it's like, oh well, you're just inlining styles, and like immediately, like you're really not, like, you this is not happening, like, and it's kind of like, oh well, it's not going to fit every situation. Well, of course it's not going to fit every situation, but I think there's a line in your article that's like, it's why it's not called utility only, it's why it's called utility first.
Yeah.
And that was something that really struck me when I read it. It was like, oh yeah, of course, like, this is just like, this is something that can help us, like, in a project, like, globally, it's going to make things simpler. But if we need to extend it so that we add to it rather than like it cause a hindrance, I think that was something that really struck me. And I have to say, like, that, yeah, I did not migrate a project that I was working on and worked on for many years. It kind of felt like a monolith, and it wasn't something that I was really gonna take on. But I have to say, in future, I think that based on, like, reading the article and the feedback and the groundswell of support for this, I think that it would be foolish not to investigate it at least. And I think that, like, that's really thanks to articles like yours.
So let's what I liked about articles, and I like success stories of this nature, is that it's inspiring to other people. So, Scott, to address your point earlier of being, like, cautious, right? And you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
some young buck that's on your team that's like, hey, here's the hot new thing, we should adopt this. Being able to say, well, write the team up something like this, something that addresses all the points. Take it more seriously. Yeah, you want us to invest a whole bunch of hours into this? It sounds exciting, sure. But what about this? What about this? Let's bring it to the rounds. Write down all the questions. And then you, the one that wants this, write that article up for us. I think if more people did that and shared it with the community as well, they would learn a lot in the process too, right? I know that when I've had to do that, whenever I give a talk, I learn so much so quickly when I'm actually having to phrase it so that other people can follow me. Trying to draw a diagram, of the Redux flow and why side effects are important and all that. Like, yeah, it's a good opportunity for personal growth in pointing these things out.
Yeah, I totally subscribe to what you said. And first, like, when you definitely when you write about something, or you try to come up with like an actually written or presentation version, of a thought that you have, you realize that it's not necessarily as clear in your head as you thought, and you're probably going to learn so much through that process. But I really like the mindset that you just underlined, where if you have like more junior people and more senior people in a team, usually what you will want to watch out for is you want to make sure that your junior people take the time to investigate rather than being overexcited by something and just wanting to apply it. But on the flip side, as a more senior person, you might lean on like erring on the side of caution and being like, no, we're not changing anything if we don't have a super good reason to do it, because this is a bias. As you grow older, as you grow more senior, you want to take less risks, because also you might have expectations in your role to mitigate risk, to minimize risk. But that's actually something you want to be cautious about, is not to overlook new things that can be interesting. And again, you will always find a reason to say that, oh, hot new thing is just old thing with that extra thing. It's easy for when we want to dismiss something
Right.
to say, oh yeah, Flux is just MVC but rebranded. It's super easy to do, but that's because we don't want to bother. We don't want to go there, and we think that it's not going to bring anything, while it may. And so it's really good, I think, as a more seasoned engineer, to consider like all the energy and all the fire from more junior people who want to try all those things, to really see it as an asset and as something that you may no longer have, at least not with the same force, like the same strength. But at the same time, use your experience to keep them accountable and allow them to grow. It's going to be extremely interesting for them if you're able to tell them, like, okay, you want to use that thing now. If you're ready to commit, then that's what I need you to do. You need to convince me. You need to convince the team.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to go at it with a good mindset, not something like, oh, you got to convince me, and ultimately, you're never going to convince me. But
Yeah.
we'd love to be convinced, but your job now is to investigate maybe what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, and look at it from a more analytical perspective rather than a fanboy aspect. And ultimately, everybody
Yeah.
grows, and that's what you want. You want people to you want people to be more accountable for the choice that they want to make. Is okay, you want to make a change, then let's do the work, let's do the entire work. But that's your job as well, to consider that there might be new things that might be better, or maybe just as good as the things that you tried when you were younger, or when it was your prime in the business.
Mm.
I think that's all of that is true. But I think with a senior, it's important to remember, if you're doing client work, if you're doing a project and you're on a project for a long time, I think that you have to embrace the fact that you're going to need to regenerate your code. Like if you like, don't let it sit still. And that's for me one of the great things about getting new people onto the team, and like younger people, fresh into the industry, that that gives them you get the opportunity to really regenerate the code, because that I don't think there can be anything worse. If the code sits still for so long, then you're basically consigning that project to the bin. Like you, it's not going to continue in any good way. Like you have to always be looking out for new things. So yeah, like totally, you need the young people coming in. And you also, in my opinion, you also need to accept that they're going to know more than you are on certain things, and really, really embrace that, and really like take advantage of that. So the project gets regenerated, and your knowledge gets regenerated as well. I mean, I think there's wins from everybody there.
Before we move on into the closing section, I want to switch topics to what starts as more maybe like a trolling kind of defense of trolls against trolls. And it's this also on Twitter. David K. Piano brought up this idea of overengineering, and that overengineering doesn't actually mean uses tech that I don't like or understand. It can be a good thing, right? I think the flux pattern is often considered to be over engineering, but it can be a really useful thing for making sure that there's built-in almost guidelines. You don't have to be explicit. Everything goes into the service. The effects is the only one that can talk, or the side effects. The saga is the only one that can talk to the service, and so on and so forth, right? Everything has a place to live. So yes, it is over-engineered, but in this case, it makes the development process go more smoothly. That steals that example, but what's your take on that, Sarah? And how do you talk through that with your team as well to get them on the same page?
So yeah, I really liked that David brought that up, and I actually wrote a thread after that because I definitely agree. There's a tendency to call over-engineered something that you just don't like, and it's a quick and easy way of dismissing stuff. Because over-engineering is not like there's no clear definition of it, and it's by default, like by definition it's biased. Oh, what is over engineered? Like what is perfectly engineered to the exact extent of what is under engineered? That depends on so many things. Many, like it depends on the context. You don't know the context. You don't know what team is going to work on it. You don't know how the project is going to evolve. And that's probably the biggest thing. We are like there have been books, like entire myriads of books and practices written on the topic of helping you scale, especially helping you scale when you don't know what the future holds. And that's probably what we're the most scared about when we tackle a new project is how do we make sure that without knowing where it's going to go, we're going to be able to make that thing scale. And so all the things like clean code and solid principles and domain driven development, etc., all those books and all those practices, they stem from the same idea, which is how do we make sure that we prepare our code base and that we prime it in a way that is not going to blow up in your face later. And so when you take something like React, that in the front end world feels kind of, for many folks, not everybody, but for many folks, feels like supernatural now. It's like, yeah, of course you're going to use React. Like, why use something else, or Vue or Angular? But you can consider that over engineered. Do you need it for a blog? No, you don't need it for a blog. But do you need it let's take an example. You're building a small marketing site, and your entire team knows React and they don't know anything else, and they don't know the DOM API because they never learned it, because they arrived in the industry where React was already well established, and so they never learned the DOM API. Is React over engineered for the project? Maybe, but is React over engineered, like for the project? I mean, for the technical project, maybe, but for the project in general, if you consider the project being uh, several people in a team and their productivity, I don't think so. I think it's perfectly engineered because it means that the project is probably going to ship faster, and they're going to feel more comfortable, and they're going to be keen on maintaining it and not letting it rot. Like we all know those projects where we have to use tech that we hate or we don't know or whatever, and we want to get out of it as quickly as possible, and then it rots, and maybe it uses the perfect tailored tech for it, but that's not the one that fits. So I think this aspect is really important. What are people comfortable with? And yes, maybe some of the new front end engineers don't learn the DOM API, and some people think that they should. Well, there are things that we never learned as front end engineers. There are so many things that I don't know about computers, and I don't think I need to know them to build applications. So I feel that this is a very important aspect of things. Is that it's not just about the tech, it's not just about the end result, it's the people who are going to interact with it, and it matters a lot. And so your question initially was like, how do you make sure to to manage this question of over engineering and under engineering? That's a difficult one. I think it's a lot of things in engineering. I feel that, like, if it goes well or not depends really on the relationship that are established between people in a team. Like, if you have really you can have the best engineers if they have crappy relationships, if they don't like each other and they don't enjoy working together, it's always going to take forever to ship anything, because every like basically people are not going to be like focused on making sure the project ships or uses the best thing or whatever. It's going to be like, how can I show this asshole that I'm better than them, you know? So it's never going to work. And you can have the best people if you cultivate great relationships, if you make sure that you have balance in a team, that everyone feels appreciated for what they do, that everyone feels respected and feel celebrated, and their knowledge feels like they feel celebrated for the knowledge they have, and they never feel shamed for the knowledge that they don't have. Usually that will go much better. And you know, like that I know that's it doesn't really answer the question of how do you handle over engineer, under engineering. To me, those questions, they're like kind of implementation detail. They Everything fits once you have that good base of good good relationship between people. And then yes, those debates happen, but they can be solved so much more efficiently, because and there's so much literature anyway online to find arguments for that, and to be able to have a healthy conversation. But you have the base for the healthy conversation. And to me, that was the core of David's tweet: is don't let negativity push you to use big words that scare people. Like, oh, you anybody can feel smart when they say, oh, you know what, like, Next.js is so over engineered and you should never use it, because it makes you feel like you're someone who gets it and who knows that, oh, it's engineered in a way it should have never been engineered. Well, you're not helping anything. You're actually making people feel insecure, and you're not giving them any food for thought. You're just giving them empty opinions that will never help them, yeah, just think it through and make their own informed decisions. So ultimately, I would say, like, maybe a bit less opinions. It can be nice sometimes to, like, not have an opinion on everything. It's all right to say I don't know. It's all right to say I suspend my judgment and I'll try it and I'll see. It's okay not to know and not to pick a side. That's fine. We all want to do great work. We all that I guess it's the common goal. We all want to do great work. Maybe if we don't try so much to put our image and our self-worth so close to the truthfulness of our opinions, and like how much truth can I find, maybe we're all going to be better off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that hits it on the nose. You know, I was speaking to Jem Young from Netflix the other day, and on the podcast, and he makes this quote a lot, but it's, you can tell the seniority of an engineer by how often they answer the question with, "Well, it depends," because you have to be flexible. You have to, you know, roll with it, because it's a constantly shifting and changing landscape that we work within. And I mean, the only thing I do is I make sure not to have my rules too hard and fixed, because they need to be flexible. I do have some, right? And I've learned that the hard way over time. This is about approaching an over engineering kind of thing. When you see things being built on top of pre-existing solutions, right? When you have a lot of like, in the Vue world, there was a lot of the loaders, the create new Vue apps, like that kind of thing. Back when Vue 2 was first there, there were a bunch of those. There was one in particular that I was like, I like the look of this guy's GitHub. I'm going to try that one out. So I built my website based on that. And then Vue 2.5 or whatever, or one of them released some sort of like, this is the way we're going to do new build projects from now on. And suddenly my website was like unmaintainable because I built it off of a very small one person project and I didn't understand the concepts behind it. So it was putting the magic in the wrong place and not, I think that's the perpetual evolution we're facing anyway. Is yes, you're seeing the same trends again and again, but that magic is being, moved to a different place. What
Exactly.
were you
But
going to say, Scott?
I was just gonna say that, like, it is the shifting sand of the industry that makes it like it wasn't the wrong decision when you did it. It wasn't the wrong decision. It
Mm.
became the wrong decision. Like, and I think the most important thing that I try to remember is I will be wrong. Like, it doesn't matter whether I'm wrong right now or I'm wrong
Yeah.
like in the future, but I will be wrong. Like, so, like, just try and be a bit humble with that, because it is like I know that I'm going to make a wrong decision, like, or maybe I make the right decision now, but like 6 months down the line it turns out to be the wrong decision. But because for a number of reasons, it could just be that the technology shifts. It could just be like, um so never really I never really try and um I would never really try and like force somebody's opinion down like on the team, because like eventually like that kind of thing is going to bite you. I mean, like, super bad practice anyway. Like, you would never do that to somebody who's on your team, but um, for sure it's going to catch up with you. Like, that's just the nature of the industry. So like,
Yeah, and
always
it's
accept you're wrong.
yes, definitely. And like looking for the truth or the absolute ultimate truth is such an empty pursuit. That's not really what we're doing. We're here to in this industry, we're here to solve problems with technology. And we build applications and we build websites, and ultimately that's what counts. I feel like if you're using WordPress, allegedly you're using outdated technology. For like, yeah, you might be using something more robust or more xyz, but it works, it ultimately,
Mhm.
if you don't see the difference or you can hardly see the difference, it works, and that's what counts. So I would say it's not even a matter of right or wrong. It's more like, yeah, if a technology does the job that it's supposed to do, then that's fine. And I feel like, yeah, in some industry, like in some niche, like if you're working in a startup and you're making like very high tech stuff, you're probably not going to use WordPress. But yeah, that's not the tool for you. It's not necessarily that a specific tech is good or bad. It's just that it's not for you. I would argue that WordPress does many things that like I haven't seen any other tech do it as well. If you have a customer who want to manages their own site and they already know WordPress and they want to be able to input text and just see it right away, yeah, you can reproduce that, and you can do a fancy Next.js, TypeScript, Sanity.io, whatever integration of things. But
Mhm.
it may take more time, so it might be better on some aspects, but you still have to teach people how to use that. You still have to wire things together, and so both approaches are valid. Maybe some are less groundbreaking in term, or less safe, or less DX, or less fancy, or less whatever, but ultimately it works. And that's probably why a significant percentage of the web is still running on WordPress, is that it does the job. So yeah, I guess ultimately it's also a matter of I really subscribe to what you said. When, yeah, you will be wrong, definitely, but not because you're right for at a given moment for a given project means that other people at the same moment are wrong because they make another choice. It's if someone is using jQuery in a project or dummy or whatever, and even then, like, we consider at some point that jQuery was an evolution on the DOM API, and now we kind of went backwards. Like, oh yeah, if you want to use, if you want to go without React or Vue or Angular or whatever, at least do DOM API because jQuery this and this and that. Well, it works and people are productive with that. And yes, it works. And at some point, we thought of it as something really cool. And so why I yeah why do we want to shame people who do things differently? That's kind of the bigger question. But yeah, let maybe that's the next step. Instead of just thinking about the tech and always being like, what's the next big hot new tech, what's the next good thing that we can do to be better people towards other engineers, is maybe the next question that we want to ask ourselves. How can we be better with other people rather than how can we be better just engineers?
Yeah, I love that. And I think that ties back into what we talked about in the first part of the show, which is in answering those questions about your hot new approach, whatever it might be, you have to put on the other person's shoes. You have to have some empathy for whatever the situation is. And it's not just going to be your team and is it React versus Vue. It can also be what is the right thing to be using to solve the client's problem. Like if they are, someone in their 70s and they know WordPress because they've used it for a while, don't make them learn a new input system. Like have some empathy. Yeah, I think it comes right back to that. So good. Good for us, full circle. um, it's time for us to move into these sort of the closing segments, and a first one of those is True Hero. So what we do in this segment is highlight a few true front heroes that are working across the planet and to thank them for all that they do. Sarah, you had a colleague of yours you'd like to recommend, Francois. Can you tell us a bit about him and why you're recommending him for True Hero?
Yeah, definitely. So Francois Charly, I've been working with him at Algolia since I arrived, and the reason why I wanted to mention him is that so he works on Frontend. He's part of the instant search team at Algolia, working on UI libraries for search, and he recently refactored, so not single handedly, but a huge part of the code base is his. Uh, Refactored our autocomplete library. So we have an autocomplete library that has been in V0 for forever. And so he worked on it and he really transformed it into something that I've been able to not only use, I've used it to refactor the search on the Algolia documentation. And we've been able to come up with a whole new experience, so much better. And so yeah, I think he's a really excellent engineer who actually came out of school not that long ago, so that's even more impressive. So I would definitely recommend him. Recommend like checking what he does. His GitHub page. He has ton of interesting open source projects, but mostly for autocomplete. Definitely.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, we'll recommend some of those links in the show notes. And Francois, thank you again for all the work that you do. Keep up the good work. Next, any proper hero is a well-rounded one, and so we want to share some simple musical picks. So, Scott, what is the favorite thing you've been listening to lately?
So it's not an album yet, but one of my favorite artists is Saint Vincent. And she's released a new single called "Pay Your Way in Pain," which I'm really loving. And she's got a new album coming out very soon, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, very excited for that as well. Sarah, how about you?
So I'm one of those people who always listens to old stuff, and I kind of stop listening to new things, which is a problem. But still, I'm happy with my old stuff. I love female rock artists, and so I've been re-listening the music of Hole, Courtney Love Band, and so this is just so good. If you've never listened to Courtney Love, if you've never listened to Hole, go with it. Like Celebrity Skin is probably the right album to start with. It is just so good. If you're a big like rock grunge fan, you're never gonna be disappointed by Courtney Love. So yeah, that would be my pick.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll need to go back to that. Well done. And then from my side, there's this guy originally from Chicago, though I guess he works as a product manager, I found out today, in Oregon now. His stage name is Professor Click, Kliq. His latest album from 2019, it's good. It's like electronic. I don't know. I never know how to describe this stuff, but maybe this one, it's more like electronic funk. Um, it's awesome. It really is like you're kind of doing the head bobbing while you're programming kind of music. It's good. I don't know. The combination of throwing some funk and some bass lines in there really makes the difference between that and maybe normal coding music. So yeah, that album is called Entertainment System. So great. With that out of the way, it looks like that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you should like, heart, or star us in your podcatcher of choice. Reviews and ratings are how the fancy algorithms help people find our content, and the power to help is within you. If you have any questions or topics you want covered in our next episode, please do send us a tweet at Heroes Frontend on Twitter, and we'll add it to our list. We're also up on YouTube, so check us out and find us there. Until next time, though, heroes, remember, with great front-end power comes great responsibility. See you next time.